let's take a look at ERCOT. ERCOT in Texas is the Texas grid, and there is 181 gigawatts of nameplate capacity on the grid. They only used 82 in 2025. They had a max load of 82 gigawatts. And you take a look at the billions of dollars that they had to pay for transmission lines to get the wind and solar. In the United States, we're facing a huge financial crisis that is not being talked about. The wind industry was taking nameplate upgrades and under the Inflation Reduction Act, and everybody says it is the cheapest thing on the planet. And Dr. Lars, you've got a fantastic video that you just put out talking about silicon and how much energy it takes to create wind and solar. That was a phenomenal video. And when you sit back and look at the over purchasing on the grid, holy smokes, nobody's got a crayon. I went to Oklahoma State University and we have crayons. It's a big crayon now to calculate how much extra you have to put on the grid in order to support that wind and solar. But you started it even when you create it. Your video was phenomenal. Sorry for being nice to you. I'm sorry.
You're very kind. No, thank you so much. No, but I mean, look, I consider myself like a macro energy economist, and why do I do this? I mean, I love the challenge of trying to understand, and I still understand this much of what I want to understand, but I always try to look at, the whole life cycle, the whole system, because in the end, I like saying electricity is not a product,
right?
Kilowatt hours. Electricity is a service, making kilowatt hours available.
Huge difference.
Huge difference, right? Because you don't go to Starbucks to buy a coffee, a product. You go to Starbucks for a service. That's why you pay much more than the product, right? And it's the same with electricity, right? So with electricity, you need to have a system available to give you electricity when you need it, not when not when the weather allows you to have it, but when you need it. And that make me understand, wow, we have to look at this entire system, what it takes to put the system into place, what it takes to operate this system, what it takes to dispose of the system, right? And yet our entire energy policy is based on counting CO2, right? I mean, the whole idea of pricing CO2 is economically completely wrong. And it's not about not supporting the environment. It's just about giving wrong economic incentives to a system, like what happened in Texas, right? You're building ridiculous wind and solar capacity, which has zero CO2, which is actually not the case. It doesn't have zero CO2, but they claim it has zero CO2. And now you have this capacity which is useless in the winter, especially, and of course at night also it doesn't do much. So I mean, look, the problem about wind and solar, and people say, look, Lars speaks against wind and solar always so much. Why does he do that? Well, I mean, it's not, again, I have nothing against the solar panel or against the windmill. I actually ran a wind park myself for 3 years. It's funny enough.
Wow.
I was actually a director of a wind park, small wind park in Germany for 3 years. And the reason why I'm vehemently expressing that wind and solar are a big problem at grid scale is actually not only the intermittency.
Right.
It's not only the intermittency that the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. There's two other problems. The second problem is the energy density, right? The energy density, that means the amount of energy you can collect per square meter is limited by nature. That's energy density, right? And that energy density you cannot change with technology. You see, think about it. The sun shines, and this energy of the sun is unlimited. We agree. And it would be beautiful if you can harness it. It would be amazing. But the fact is, on our planet, only very little energy, dilute energy, comes per square meter when the sun shines. And that means we have to now build this infrastructure to collect this free energy, this huge infrastructure. Right? By the way, coal from the ground is also free energy I get from the ground. It's not unlimited as the sun is. I understand that. Trust me, I understand that. But of course, I now have to collect this solar energy or this wind energy and I have to build this infrastructure. right? So the intermittency, obviously a huge problem. In Germany, the sun shines 10% of the time. That means 90% of the time it doesn't shine. In California, it shines 25% of the time. That means 75% doesn't shine. In the UAE and in Emirates, maybe it's 30% of the time, maybe 33% it shines, right?
Wow.
So now you start to understand you have the intermittency plus you have the density. That's actually the fundamental problem because the density means I need to have a huge investment, not only of money, but also of infrastructure. That means raw materials and energy. I have to actually invest energy to build this infrastructure.
Right.
And I've built now infrastructure that lasts not 50 years like a coal or gas power plant or 60 years.
No.
It lasts, actually, the modern solar panels last 10, 13, maybe 15 years if you're lucky. The old ones lasted 25 years, but not the new ones, right? They're so thin and so optimized. So you're building infrastructure that only lasts, a few years, but you have to replace it 3 times more than a coal, gas, and nuclear power station
Until you see a hailstorm in
until
Texas
you
and then
see a
it gets
hailstorm, right?
wiped
All
out.
those things. So the third key problem is this lifetime, what I call the lifetime, operational lifetime, right? So you have the intermittency, the density, and the lifetime. And those three things you really cannot change with technology. That's the misunderstanding. People always say, no, but Lars, it's getting cheaper, it's getting better, technology will solve this. I'm sorry, you cannot solve the intermittency problem without putting additional infrastructure in place to try
Right.
to store, blah, 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 and all those things. We talk about storage. But the energy density is not solvable. And the
Right.
lifetime gets worse. It doesn't get better. The more complex a system becomes, the less it lasts, right? Our phones last today less than they last, 10 years ago, right? I mean,
And
so the more advanced technology becomes, always the shorter it lasts. So whoever talks about this differently, I'm sorry. Yeah. So
no, you're spot on.
and and
This
and
is
and, and,
cool.
and you see, and when you think about it now, you have this intermittency issue, they have the lifetime issue, and you have density issue. That means you have to build this vast infrastructure. Not only that, you now have to build what I call auxiliary infrastructure to try to overcome part of those problems.
Right.
Storage, basically storage, transmission grids, all those things, short duration storage, long duration storage, right? And in order to overcome the intermittency, you have to vastly overbuild the infrastructure. And not 5 times, 10 times, 100 times if you want to
Right.
charge the storage. And all this infrastructure lasts a fraction of the time of an existing old power plant. So you're replacing a coal or gas fired power station with
Right.
not one solar panel. You're replacing it with unbelievable amounts of solar panels and windmills,
Right.
plus the short duration storage batteries, plus the long duration storage hydrogen,
Right.
plus the infrastructure, network integration. I
Uh,
mean,
This is making my
who
head
doesn't
hurt again.
understand that this is a step back in development, right? This is a step back. It's not a step forward.
Right.
And again, I am all for energy efficiency and forward thinking. I am against wasting energy and raw materials. I'm a commodity trader. I care about
Right.
commodities. I care about energy. And that's why it's for me so obvious. And I still struggle why politicians, including the European Commission, recently just said again, wind and solar are the lowest cost ever. In October 2025, with Germany being the
Wow.
master of wind and solar installations in the world, the highest energy cost, not the highest, the UK is doing worse, I'm sorry. But I mean, I don't understand how politicians cannot try to want to understand why Germany is in trouble and why the UK is in trouble from an energy
Right.
perspective. It is purely because of wind and solar, nothing else.